Vision. Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. John just gave me the signal to get started, and that's almost like a command. John points his finger, and when he does that, it means get rolling and don't stop for the next hour. Glad to have you with us today on the next to the last day of the old year. We're going into New Year, and I hope you will have the 2020 that the year invokes. You know, this is 2020, so we have to increase our eyesight. Glad to have all of you with us, and WFOV, want to thank you for joining us over there at 92.1. Mr. Paul Herring, want to thank you for the fine job you're doing over there, and we hope that you think we are doing our job over here at the studio, allpointstv.com. We're the program called What's Going On, and we come on until John and I get in these animated conversations prior to the program going on. We start at 2 o'clock. That's our schedule. Sometimes we'll start a little bit later, as we're doing now, because we were involved in some of the studio conversations, some things that you don't hear, but it animates our conversation when we go live on the set. I said last week that we were going to talk a little bit about the reason why the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court sits in on the trial when the president's the one being tried in the Senate on impeachment charges. And I wish we had more people, and the scholars are included in this, I wish we had more people that really understood the impeachment process, and I'm finding out many of them that are commenting upon it do not understand it. And it's very troublesome because these politicians pick up, because they're not going to read anything, they're not going to read the Constitution for themselves. They want to have the scholars that tell them what the document says because they're too lazy, to read it. I mean, they're talking about you have to pass bills before you read the bill. You have to pass the bills before you read the bill. So they're not reading anything. And they're not, if you don't read the bill, can we say this so I'm about to get mad? If you don't read the bill before you pass it, I don't think you're going to read it after you voted on it.
It's like, what? Okay.
What sense would that make, John?
I'd like to say this. Okay, these guys are saying, these people, I mean, John Conyers at one time about the healthcare bill. He said, oh, yeah, of course I didn't read it. It's like 2,000 pages. I went, okay, then why the hell should we accept it? Right. You don't even know what's in it, and we're supposed to have faith in you that you're doing for something good for us? You haven't even read it. And then that begs the question, if it's your job to write up legislation and you haven't even read this, right, who wrote it?
John Conyers was acting like it was a chore and inappropriate for people to expect him to have read it. He was actually horrified that someone would hold them to account to read something that you're going to pass in the law. Before you do it, we want you to know what you're passing. And that was amazing that they would admit that in public. We knew it was going on, but for them to admit it was quite a startling moment. And they're not reading it. That's why they build these 2,000-page bills, and then they embed their little riders into it. And before we knew it, we got a catastrophic situation on our hands that nobody knows how it occurred, because they put this stuff in these larger bills and then case some stuff in there that we don't want to vote for, and gets lost in the details and the small print and all of the language they put over the all-encompassing things they want to hide from the public. So yeah, this is a problem that we have to deal with, because our government has become humongously out of control, and how we got here was through some of these stall tactics that we're now looking at, and we have got to get control of it if we're going to establish that which is left, what the framers put in place. They put in place a marvelous system, but I'm beginning to think that very few people, including the scholars, understand it. One of the particulars is what we're arguing about now, online and otherwise. I'm on Facebook every day, and I'm writing. I probably write the longest articles on Facebook, and not that anybody's really going to read all of what I'm writing. 4 or 5 will do it, but for the 4 or 5 that will read it, I'm trying to give a landscape of understanding for those that might want to get another point of view. Not one from the mountaintop, but one just comes out of the fact that I've done some studying too. And that's why I don't take a back seat to these these television commentators. You know, these TV scholars like Alan Dershowitz. And every time I look up, he's on TV talking about something and making a carload or truckload a boatload, a trainload of mistakes in what he's talking about, because I don't think that Alan Dershowitz is the person that is the know-all of the Constitution. And what I see here, he doesn't understand a lot of it. Much of what he's talking about, he doesn't understand. I don't think any of them, I haven't heard one yet, and I haven't heard all of them, so I can't say all of them, but they all seem to be feeding off each other. And I haven't heard one yet that has shown an understanding of the impeachment process. And that's why we're going to have to continue to talk about it, because there's so much that they're putting out there that needs to be clarified, and a lot of it needs to be interrogated and changed. So when you start hearing them talk about the Chief Justice sitting over the impeachment hearing of the president, they say that he sits there as a referee. And that's not true. They say that, but that's not why he's sitting there. You know, the framers put and I'm in awe of what they did. I have to tell you, I am in awe of what they've created, because they were not doing this, holding a book up and then plagiarizing what had been written before them. That's easy to do. You can regurgitate some information already on a page, and you have to just write it on your page and claim it for yourself as your own creation, plagiarism issue and so on and so forth. That's not what they did. What they did is that they didn't go in there with any notes. I mean, they had some ideas now based upon their study. These were the scholars. Ayn Rand calls them the nation's first intellectuals. And so far, she said, Ayn Rand having died in 1982, she said, and so far, they were the last intellectuals.
John F. Kennedy also, he also said that about the founders, too. They were the most brilliant people we ever had.
Couldn't have done it without their brilliance. And this is 37 years now on the other side of Ayn Rand's death, and her prognosis at that time still stands 37 years later. We don't have anybody that can match the framers in this country. And we need to stop tampering what they put in place, because we're not on that level. We have never seen, I don't know if the world has ever seen, that many minds of that level in one place thinking about one premise and focusing on getting it done from the beginning point of it to the very ending of it. All 7 articles in the original document of the Constitution, thematically written and seamless in its design. And that's why if you don't understand the whole document and you go to a piece of it, you won't understand it, because it's a seamless document and every other part of it lays over into the other parts of it. So I know how you see in geometry that the whole is equal to sum of its parts. But in this case right here, you have to understand the whole, because the parts are all part of the connectivity to the whole. The parts are the connectivity to the whole. And you have to understand the whole to understand its parts, because each of the parts explains the other parts, and because it's tied into it. I was saying on one of my posts that what a lot of the scholars are missing is that the check and balance system we talk about all the time, and we should talk about it because it's so primary to the document, but the check and balance system is not just Article 1, 2, and 3, and then the separation of powers between the 3 of them, 3 branches of the federal government, and how they check on each other so that neither one of the corridors of power can go out of control, because it's being restrained by the other 2. Each one of the 3/3 is restraining the others, so 1/3 is being corralled by the other 2/3, and those 2/3 corralling the 1/3. Yeah, that much is true. But the check and balance system and the separation of powers is throughout the document. And I don't think the scholars understand that. If they did, they wouldn't be making the comments they're making. For example, one of the discussions on Facebook today, before I came to the studio, was saying that they were making some comment about something that Donald Trump had said. and they were saying that it was, I guess they were quoting Chuck Schumer, that was saying that they were concerned about the collaboration between Mitch McConnell and the president. The president is coordinating the strategy with the members of the Senate, and they are politically collaborating. And there should not be, this is Chuck Schumer saying it, and they should not be involved in political collaboration. You know, folks, when I hear that, when my ears pick up, this is really a dumb bill. Here you have a political process, and that's what it is, and that's what Alan Dershowitz recognized and then denied it after recognizing it. If you quote Alan Dershowitz, let me tell you something. This is for you. If you quote Federalist Paper 65, if you quote that, and you claim, as you've done, because I've listened to you very carefully, and you claim that Alexander Hamilton, who wrote two of the 85 Federalist Papers, the only two, I'm not saying he wrote only two Federalist Papers, I'm saying he wrote the only two papers of the Federalist Papers on the impeachment process, 65 and 66. Both of those are written by Alexander Hamilton. So we go to Hamilton because he is the quote unquote philosopher of the hour on the impeachment process, because he's sitting in there as a single delegate from New York. I don't know how many persons arrived there, but at the end, he's the only one there because he's the only signature from New York of the Constitution of the United States. Of the 39 persons that signed that document at the end, the only one that signed it from New York was Alexander Hamilton. And that presupposes that he was not having to deal with contrarian conversations there because his caucus was himself. He's there by himself from New York. So he's got a singletary position inside of there. The caucus members in other parts, in other states, that's not a problem he had to deal with. So I look to Alexander Hamilton because of his prominence in writing the 51 Federalist Papers that he wrote, of the 85. He wrote 51 of those altogether. James Madison, the secondary but also very important writer of the Federalist Papers, wrote 29, and then John Jay, the other person that wrote the Federalist Papers, wrote 5 of those. So 51, 29, and 5, 85 altogether. So you look to Alexander Hamilton because Hamilton is only one of the writers writing under the pseudonym of Publius. He's the only one that commented about the impeachment. That's left up to Alexander Hamilton, mainly because by this time, as it got to that level of writing, 65 and 66, John Jay had gotten sick and was unable to make a contribution later on in the writing of these documents, trying to explain why the country should in fact endorse the efforts of those at the Constitutional Convention in 1787. I want people to understand that these people in that room, all these minds congregating in that room, all that brain power, you can't find that on one college campus, not even Harvard University, not Oxford over there in England. You cannot find that much brain power in one place anywhere on the planet. That's the first time that has occurred, and that's why they were able to create that document. And we need to stop tampering with it, because you're not qualified to come behind those minds and do what you're doing with it. Every time you tamper with it, we get into another problem. Trying to solve a problem, we create multiple problems in doing that, and we need to leave the document alone. It was fine the way it was. And you can always tweak it in terms of adding some things to it to deal with things not in the purview at that time, but the fundamentals of the document needs to be left in place. And we need to stop, altering it, because we're going to alter to a point at some point we end up abolishing it. And that would be a catastrophic problem for this country. It already is in some of the ways we've changed it already. You can amend it, but you cannot. And I'll say this. I don't know if anybody will go along with me on this one, but I will say that there are some amendments that you add to the Constitution that the Constitution does not allow itself to be amended in this way, because you cannot amend the document where you take the document out of existence. Isn't that true? And so, to some extent, some of the amendments in the document have been declaratory to make the document as its original intent non-existent. I don't think you can do that to a document. You can amend the intent of the document. You scholars pick up on that one and do with it what you will, but you don't have it in a lot of cases. And I'm calling you on. I'm calling you what you're saying. You're saying some things here. This is this guy with the Noah Feldman. You're saying some things about impeachment. I don't know. If I said the things I hear them saying, I could not sleep at night, because I don't want to mislead anybody. And I can understand how easy you could do that. Because you're in a classroom, and you have to be very careful, because you have these minds out there, and they're going to have a lot of believability, because they've not read what you read, and you have to be very tight with your theoretical understandings and things of that sort. Make sure they're based upon very firm grounding points, because there are people out there taking this stuff down and writing this stuff down and putting that into their thought process and carrying it out in society, where they are going to have, particularly at these large schools, these Ivy League schools, they're going to have a great impact upon society in the future. You have a great responsibility. And I knew when I was in the classroom in public school for 36 years in the classroom, I had a student tell me one time that, Mr. Miles, you're the first one to ever talk to us. I went home that day, and I was burdened by that. Because if that was true, and I had no reason to doubt it, because I saw the state they were in when they came in there, I was burdened by that. Because what that did is said to me, I had a tremendous responsibility. So everything I said in that classroom had to be as correct as I could get it. Because if I made a mistake, that was 100%. And that was an awesome sense of responsibility that I felt at that point, on that day. And when my roommates, I had two roommates, when they would go out on Saturday morning and come back in the afternoon, I'd be sitting in that chair, and I still got that book in my hand. They say, I don't believe this. That's why I was sitting in that chair. I didn't want that burden. I wanted to be one of many voices. But when I was the only voice out there in that realm, I had to tighten my game up. And that's what I'm saying about Noah Feldman. Because what you're saying out there, and so is Lawrence Tribe, I don't know what they're doing at Harvard University, because that's where Alan Dershowitz is from. He was there 33 years at Harvard University, and they have a chair waiting for him. They have his chair sitting there in that university, because he's an emeritus professor. That means that nobody can sit in that chair. That chair is reserved. If he goes there right now, that chair is open to him to sit there, because he's a professor emeritus at Harvard University. He worked there 33 years. But I don't know what they're teaching there at Harvard when I hear them talking in public. And when Feldman said what he said 2 weeks ago, and they're now running as if this is some kind of gospel from the mountaintop coming down with the tablets of Moses, well, this man had the nerve. This is outrageous. This is irresponsible. This man would do this because of his status as a professor at Harvard University. People are listening to this man, and he does not show that he merits it. Saying that and not saying it behind closed doors. We saw it on television. The whole nation saw it. The President of the United States was impeached by the statutory claims written down by the framers, carrying out the design in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, and carried out in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6, which I'm going to read that to you where you won't think I'm making it up, because I want to tell you why it is that Chief Justice Roberts will be sitting in there in that trial. It is not what they're talking about. I'll explain why he's sitting in there. But it's not what they're saying. They're saying that he's sitting there as a referee. But Noah Feldman, you're wrong about this part about the impeachment. The president has been impeached. And for you to say that in public shows disrespect. Disrespect of the Constitution that you're supposed to be the scholar of. And it's disrespect to the intelligence of the American people who are depending upon you to tell them the truth. You know, I remember I wrote about that song called Patches, right? Daddy, I'm depending on you to tell me the truth. And then Daddy said, you know, you depend upon authority figures that tell you the truth. And they have to the best of their ability, get it right. And I don't think Noah Feldman believes what he's saying. If he does, then that's a bigger problem. It's a big problem, even if he doesn't believe it. But it doesn't stop being a problem if he does believe it, because a scholar should not be saying things like this. You can't say stuff like that in the public domain and shower the whole country with this nonsense. The president was impeached, and he was impeached because, and listen to me close here, he was impeached because a majority of the House of Representatives brought that about, not because of the charges of treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors, which is not in Article 1, as I've been saying for the last several weeks. It's in Article 2. Article 2, Section 4. And for Alan Dershowitz, another knucklehead, I'm not saying this behind closed doors. I'm saying it to their face. You can't come behind the framers and do that. And spread this nonsense. Over the entire country. You can't do that. And I take that very seriously. You're scholars. And you have the responsibility to take your job seriously, and you don't. And I'm going to call you on it, because this cannot be tolerated. You cannot tolerate what they're doing. If Feldman does not know better than what he's saying, then Feldman should not be teaching law at Harvard University and turning out these people that are going to be the leaders of this country in the future. Because I'll tell you something, if that is not stopped, if he's saying these things and teaching that in his classroom and that's not stopped, that forebodes very badly for this country in the future. You cannot do that and be a moral scholar, and you're taking your job seriously and turning out people who are going to run this country and therefore rule the world. That's what's going to happen. From Harvard University, Columbia University, Brown, Yale, Cornell. Now we're seeing this at UNC, the University of North Carolina. They're bringing them at Stanford University. They're bringing them in there and making them the top-notch, scholars by, in fact, listening to them and putting them on TV in front of these committees when they get up there, and they have an awesome responsibility. You're talking to the whole nation. You have a responsibility to say the truth, and they're not doing that. And John is telling me that we got to put a break on it, and for the next 4 minutes, want to allow WFOV 92.1 to take a break, and we know you'll come back after the 4 minutes is over, as you always do. And we're going to get control of our emotions here, because I get very emotional about this. Okay, we'll see you on the other side of the break, WFOV. And thank you for being tuned for the first 26 minutes of the program. See you on the other side of the break.
See, I can understand why you're getting the emotional content too, because, see, some people are emotional because they're emotional, and then they try to work reasons into why they're emotional. When you're convinced of your position and you see the outcome of possible that if things aren't run the way they're supposed to, the outcome is tragic or horrific, then you are going to be tied to it. You still have emotions, but it's like being convinced because your intellect convinces you this has to be done. And they have shirked, and they haven't shirked. The teachers, the professors in colleges are basically, look, when you got people going to Harvard, and what was it, when Obama taught at one of the colleges, he's making like $100,000 a year for a part-time job. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I worked in universities, so most college professors were on campus 15 to 20 hours a week.
That's right.
Okay? So you're talking about a good, huge income. I'm not talking about the average person, average professor.
Look at the hourly.
But look at the hourly. If you look at the break it down per hourly, oh my God, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Of course, every professor doesn't get paid as much as those.
And that's why John, and that is exactly why they should get it right, because they have all that time. They're not even paid so much for being in the classroom. They're paid for their writing. When you're in the university, you are supposed to be conversing with other universities. Your writing from that university puts status on that university by what you're writing. The other university scholars read, and so they really are being paid for publications. And if you're not publishing, you're not going to get tenure.
The ones I had at U of M, I had a couple of professors in the philosophy department mostly. They were well published. They had like a lot of, every so many years they were coming out with different books on different subjects. And one particular was an amazing individual. And so, but the ones who actually got published more, it wasn't like some people say, well, see, they're so worried about publishing, they're not being good professors. The ones I had that were well published were the most entertaining, the most provocative, the most insightful, the most, because this is always fresh on them. There was a passion there.
That's what you expect. You expect to have, you don't expect to have the closed, myopic thinking that you see on college campuses right now, and that says a lot about the scholars in these universities today. The mind is supposed to be expanded by the university. Is universal. The idea is universal understandings, and this closed-mindedness you're seeing right now, this myopic vision that's being created in our universities, is very problematical for the country, and it does not speak very well for the future if we do not, in fact, arrest this and get this under control. Right now, it's really out of control, massively so, and that is a tremendous problem for the country in the future. We have some things right now that are vestiges of the time when the nation was much more conservative. And we're breathing the fumes from that right now as we're going forward. But we're going into an abyss right now that could be problematical and troublesome in the future if we don't understand what is really happening right now, because the landscape of the country, where it has been, and the tradition upon which it stands today is being altered as we speak at an ever accelerating rate. And if we do not, in fact, understand it and then seek to arrest it and reverse it, then there's going to be some problems here. And we're already seeing the manifestation of those problems right now, but it will get worse. And hopefully we will understand it and begin to understand how we have to do a turnaround. And I always say that we have to return back to the framers. But Noah Feldman, you are irresponsible as a scholar. And I have to tell you that. I'm going to speak directly to you. Because you're doing a disservice people believe you, and they'll believe me when I tell them that WFOV is now come back for the break, and we're glad that you're back, and we're not very far from where we were when you left. But we have irresponsible scholars here, and Noah Feldman is one of them. And I want to call him on it because I want to call him back to his intellectual responsibility, his scholastic responsibility, to tell the truth. Daddy, I'm depending upon you. You're not my daddy. I'm the daddy here. But that song, Patches, Daddy, I'm depending upon you to tell me the truth. Because the little son is sitting on his father. He wants his father to tell him the truth. Doesn't want the father to further confuse him with the lies. He already doesn't understand it. He's trying to get some information from those who are above him that have been there longer and can in fact pull upon more information. If it's not from a book, it's from the experience. So I understand what Patches is all about because we live it every day. There are people that are better at these things than we are. And so we appeal to them and their judgment to set it ain't just a daddy either, I might say that, since I don't want to be male oriented here. You got to shop around. Mama told me you got to shop around. That was Smokey Robinson. And so that's another aspect of it. I mean, it's your parents. They have to get it right. And we can see that they don't have it right because we see how much disorder we have in the society right now. But if they had it right, you would not have the disorder. The disorder is a testimony. And don't start calling these workshops for the children. We need to talk to the adults. Every time I look up, somebody want to bring the kids into a meeting. Why have no meeting for the children? Or we have to have it because of the application responsibility for the parent. We have to talk to the adults. Where are their meetings? Let's call all adults into assembly. And then give them some therapy. That's what the problem is. It's above the children. It ain't down here. That's the Frankenstein monster that's been created down here. The monster maker is up here. And some of it is these scholars with their lying selves.
Oh, by the way, we did have a couple of viewers who, and one person posted here, agreed the impeachment threatens the separation of powers, and she also adds they need to fix the problem of educational programming. So, I mean, that's true, too. And also, you also had a well-wisher, too, for the new year, too.
Oh, is that right?
So, the person you know, well, I don't want to mention names, but the person you know. So,
okay, somebody I know. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate any feedback we get. We get negative feedback also. We welcome that. We can always, I want to know what people are saying because, we're trying to get it right. And any constructive criticism helps me with that because, we're human, we make mistakes. I don't make many on the Constitution because I understand it better than they do. They don't think that I do because I have some D's behind my name too, but
it's a point.
It's a lesser, John. It's not Harvard University.
Somebody's asked me a couple of times, and I forgot to ask. I mean, they call you. Some people call you Dr. Moss. I mean, yeah. And so you do have the educational background.
Yeah, I do, yeah. John. I don't see I'm like Harold Cruz. Harold Cruz. You can claim all the D's and things of that sort, right? But I remember Harold Cruz wrote the book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual. Now, Cruz was the founding chair of the African American Studies Department at University of Michigan. Cruz did not have a degree, and he was insulted when you would call him doctor, because he understood the limitations of that. You have these degrees. I have these degrees. But that is not the basis of what I am saying here. Because I just took notes down and had a good memory, could go in there and regurgitate what they had said in the classroom, I could put that down because I have a very good memory. And when in my younger days, I had a photostatic memory. That's why Dr. Collins, you could not trip me up. You tried to in undergrad because you take some questions out of the footnotes and out of the bibliography, and you put that on the test, and you came in there one day bragging about how hard your test was, and I walked out in 15 minutes. You didn't like that. But I wasn't walking out because I was trying to show you up. I was walking out because I was studying for the next test. But you didn't know who was in that chair.
Well, look, do you ever know? You've heard of Eric Hoffer, haven't you?
Oh yes, Eric Hoffer, the Truth Believer.
Right, and the ordeal of change or something like that.
Yes,
he taught at the University of California, the system in there, and he didn't have a degree.
Yeah, he's one of 5 that did. See, there are some minds, John. This is the way it works, and you know it as well as I do because we talk about it off camera all the time. And see, you are one of those scholars. You'd be surprised what the conversation we had before we go online. But there were 5 scholars in the country that it behooves the institution to recognize those on the outside that are conversant enough that their outside status needs to be altered because those on the inside are not even saying what they're saying on the outside, and you bring them on the inside to make them a part of the team, which of course helps to build a defense inside of the institution for itself. Because now you have additional minds in there to justify its existence and so on and so forth. And they've always done that.
Alan Greenspan too comes to mind. He never had he didn't have a master's degree or PhD, and later it was given to him much later. It was just he actually didn't write the dissertation. They based it upon the other works he did for other journals and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who were considered experts, and I mean, I don't know if that was the best example because I have issues with the Federal Reserve System, but he was actually influenced heavily by Ayn Rand. People,
I like him already.
Yeah, I don't know if you know much about Greenspan, but I got
Greenspan. Yeah, I read Greenspan's work. He's in that book by Ayn Rand called Capitalism: The Unknown Ideal. You know, Greenspan wrote a lot of those articles in that book. Ayn Rand wrote most of them, but he wrote quite a few of them before he changed and went over there with the Federal Reserve System.
But actually, they actually asked him one time, would he stop becoming a gold bug? And he goes, I never have. I stopped being a gold bug. You know, a big supporter of gold, being the standard.
Yeah.
He never stopped.
Yeah.
He never did.
I don't have respect for him, but I definitely understand. It's just different time periods, and how people, people go in and join the team. But he was not on that team. He was not on that team when he was with Ayn Rand. He was on Ayn Rand's team. That's why she allowed him to have so much space in that book. But that's what happens. I'm on Noah Feldman here, and Dr. Feldman, you are an irresponsible scholar. You cannot be saying things out here like that. And then having these commentators run with this. The president has not been impeached. In fact, they had Donald Trump had his team saying they're going to argue that the president has not been impeached. You have to argue that the document does not exist then. It's not based upon what Noah Feldman says. He's got the Constitution. The Constitution is congruent only with itself. It's not congruent with the Supreme Court. I hear these scholars all the time tell me what the Supreme Court. I don't care what the Supreme Court said. I have to abide by it because they have the guns. That's the only reason I have to abide by that nonsense. And they're constantly changing their mind. But that does not mean it's the gospel. The gospel is in the document. Can we understand that? The framers said, do ordain the Constitution for themselves, and it said, and to our posterity. This is amazing, because they wrote that document against themselves too. You see the beauty of this document, and that's why I'm not going to let Noah Feldman get away with what he's getting away with. Not as long as they have a moral voice. It's not going to happen. They have a moral obligation. It's a moral obligation, and these scholars are immoral. Got all these commentators out here quoting this junk. The president has not been impeached. We saw it on television. We saw it on TV. They took the vote in front of the American people. Why? Because they're trying to convince more people that this guy got to go. And they have to do to Trump what they did to Richard Milhous Nixon, because Richard Nixon was forced out when they went to the American people and then took his support from him inside of his own party. They went down there and told him he had to go, because they were telling him that they could not politically defend him because it was too costly to them politically. And he was in fact taking up too much room in their space. He was the elephant in the room. And because he was in fact endangering their positions, they went down. Goldwater led the delegation down there and convinced Nixon he had to step down. And here was a man that was toppled, by the way, because of the same folks that are trying to topple this administration. I don't mean the same individual folks, the same agencies. The same agencies that topped Richard Nixon. Let me say this also to you. The same agencies that toppled the Kennedy administration. And I'll be writing about that, because the country has to understand how it has been taken over. And Donald Trump is in there as an outsider. Now he's on the inside, and you have a horse in there right now. And the reason why you have it is because he doesn't have anybody on the inside he can turn to. You're the only support base he has. And that's what's going to make him stand out when they start listing the great presidents. Not that we've had a great presidents. We only had one. The scholars can say what they want to. That's their claim. We've had one great president, and he's the only one that should be on Mount Rushmore, and that's George Washington by himself. The rest of those persons are intruders. they are intruders on Mount Rushmore. You get them out, put them on the same side. Put them up there. Well, we can't put them up there. See, at least with Cochise, they got a sculpture up, going up. I don't know if it's finished now, but I agree they should have a sculpture of Cochise, the great Native American leader. They should have and he has, and I don't. They're not putting Geronimo up there. They're not putting Tecumseh up there. They putting Cochise up there by himself. Now George Washington up there by himself. But Donald Trump is going to be a strong candidate, because we're going to make him great. Because Donald Trump has to depend upon us, and because he doesn't have anybody inside he can depend upon. That includes all the ones that are the rhinos, and all the rhinos are those up there who are Republicans. All of them are rhinos, Republicans in name only. It ain't just those people like the person I was writing about today on Facebook, former Congressman Dent, who let the cat out the bag by showing why those 39 members of the House stepped down. It's exactly what I said it was, and he admitted it in an article that quoted what he was talking about as he was advising the Democrats. John, did you read that? John, this guy named Representative Dent was actually trying to give information to the Democrats of how to impeach Donald Trump. This is a former member of the House of Representatives, one of the 39 persons that stood down, that stepped down. Of course, it's impossible to step down from the Congress. You're already down. But he stepped aside. John, the article, I quoted the article in Facebook today. Read it. The man came from behind his mask. But I had said before that all 39 of those persons stepped down. Not that you can step down from the Congress. He stepped to the side. And what they did by doing that is that they exposed Donald Trump to those they knew were invested in his impeachment. And they cost it, by the way.
There's an expression that goes, with friends like that, who needs enemies? I mean, it's like this guy, I mean, seriously, I mean, the Republican Party, see, the Democrats are, okay, I got to give them to this. They are locked up, and they can get things accomplished. So, see, Democrats cannot be embarrassed. See, the Republicans can be embarrassed. See, you cannot embarrass a Democrat because they have no standards anyway. They have none whatsoever. They'll state some and get on board, and then when you point out when they're not doing what they said they're going to do, they'll just transform into you being just mean-spirited. I mean, they have no center. They have no moral center. I mean, I've had issues with Republicans, but now, let's face it, politicians got to say as much and please as many people to keep their job after they've been in there. They don't want to lose their job. They know it's a sweet gig. They get the income we give them, plus the backdoor deals. They all walk out with a doggy bag and a Swiss bank account, probably. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what's the motivation for them.
It becomes unconscionable their behavior though when they cannot appeal to conscience when they are tenured professors, because after you get tenure, you pretty much have a lot, unless you do something outrageous, which they do some things outrageous and should be in fact called to account for it. They'll do some things academically as outrageous in terms of requiring a one-centered mindset in those university classrooms, where the other point of view is intolerable. When I was my last year working at the university, I used one of the books written by Glenn Beck, and that was a no-no. And my thank you, John. My professor, thank you, I appreciate it. My professor over the department wanted to talk to me about it because there had been some complaints made, and I told him that at the end of the course I will show them my students' remarks, and show me the remarks of those who are complaining about it. In other words, I was not going to change anything because they were complaining. And if I could not maintain my integrity, I don't need to be there. I remember, I've had those conversations all my life. I had one with the superintendent of schools when I was the principal for the last 3 years, and he sent a surrogate over there and told me that if he were the superintendent of schools, he's speaking in his voice, so I know he was actually saying what this guy had said. He said, if I were the superintendent of schools, I would fire you. I told him to go back over and tell the superintendent of this. You tell him that if you think I'm going to let him corrupt these children with this nonsense, you tell him not only should I be fired, you tell him I insist on it. You know why I said that? Because I was crazy. You're young and, you feel invincible, right? But I felt invincible. I mean, I felt I was right. And that was my invincibility. I thought I was right. And I couldn't go in there and do what they were saying. And I'm feeling I'm right, and they're telling me something that I know is wrong. I'm going to do that. I mean, Patrick, I believe in your son. I'm depending on you to tell me the truth. Daddy, I'm depending upon you to tell me the truth. And Daddy said, said in that deep voice. And Daddy said, well, that's the way it is. You have to have some moral compass, is what I'm saying. And I don't think Noah Feldman has a moral compass. I don't know him, but I don't think he could be a scholar and say what he's saying and he believes it. I don't believe he believes that. But if he does believe that, what he said, then that's a problem too. It does not absorb him of the problem. It makes the problem much more clear, and it validates the claim that he's a scholar, because you can't say that if you're a scholar. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the president has to have Nancy Pelosi walk the impeachment anywhere. That's just these rhinos trying to get an out. I'm gonna watch. I'll tell you what we're gonna do, John. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna watch Mitch McConnell, this rhino. They're claiming that. Let me say this to you, folks. Mitch McConnell is listening to Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer, John, is saying that they want to bring more witnesses in the Senate. They want to bring more witnesses.
So they want to basically, we want to make sure we can nail this guy. So we want you to suspend the way it's done, so we can make this. And then we're going to thank you because, see, now you're showing like your bipartisanship and how you really want to get to the truth of the matter. I mean, that's ridiculous. It really is.
John, it's like asking the jurors to continue the investigation. Look. The senators are the jurors. Have you ever seen anyone acting as a juror who is asked to continue the investigation of the crime? That's what they're talking. That's what Mitch McConnell is being asked to do, and he's saying he's thinking about it. Thinking about what? Let me tell you something about what Andrew Jackson would have said, as he said it to John Marshall in 1832, 1833, when he said, John Marshall has made his ruling, now let him enforce it. And to the members of the House, you have made your impeachment claim, now defend it. That's why it goes to the Senate. And it does not go there because Nancy Pelosi, I don't know if she's on crutches or not, or in a wheelchair. It doesn't go over there because she has not walked it over there yet. Maybe she needs to get some crutches to get a wheelchair and wheel it over there.
Maybe she just, did you ever see her? I think I know this. This has been proven that her office has got, for the billing, they have actually got more charges for alcohol to her office they do for food, for like catering and stuff.
Yeah.
It's more, the bar bill is bigger, basically. Nancy Pelosi's bar bill.
Yeah, John, they say that, that's interesting too. They say that most of the red wine is sold in this country in a geographical range of Washington, D.C. You know why? Because they can't have no steak without having red wine with it at the taxpayer's expense. They're not eating, if you think those guys are eating shrimp, lobster, caviar, and everything else at our expense, they're not eating at McDonald's, and they're not drinking no Boone's Farm. I don't want to knock Boone's Farm, but they are on this level because they can write it off as taxpayers' expense. And I want them to get it right. That's all they have to do. They don't have a lot to do up there. In fact, we ought to have, if the truth be told, we ought to have a part-time Congress.
They did that, then miss all the party season in D.C., though. All the people from other countries that are going to be buying our congressmen and senators, that's when they show up,
John, the crime rate will go down in Washington, D.C. by at least, I don't know what the percentage, but I would think at least by half. Because if they could not sit there, palms raised, because that's what's going on, so they can put a little, something in their hand, so as to influence how they're going to deal on the floor of the House and Senate. A little something in their hand and kind of convince them that this is the right way and not that's the wrong way, by who is in fact bringing the loot. That's documented in the book by Thomas De Lorenzo, one of his classic books. All of the books he's written is pretty much classics. This one called How Capitalism Saved America. They don't read that book in any college that I've been in. But How Capitalism Saved America, read that book. And you'll see that it's not the lobbyists that is in fact corrupting the politicians are corrupting the lobbyists. If they don't go there with a fistful of dollars, Clint Eastwood, then they don't have any influence, because you go in there with a little something in your hand, or you can't even get through the door. You go in there with something in your hand, because that's how it operates. And we have to get control of this, because this is out of control. It's not what's intended by the framers. And Noah Feldman, get this part right. If you can't get anything else right, get at least this part right. The impeachment process takes place in the House of Representatives, and the trial is held in the Senate. Once you have a majority vote in the House, more than half the voters voting for impeachment, the impeachment has occurred. It doesn't have to be walked over anywhere, because everybody in the Senate is aware the impeachment has taken place, and you cannot come behind us telling us and be a moral scholar and say that it hasn't happened because she has not walked it over. I mean, she could be in a wheelchair and couldn't walk it over, or be on crutches and couldn't walk it over. You don't have to walk it over. It has occurred because the vote was taken, and now is no longer in the hands of the House, is in the hands of the Senate under Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. And I will come back next week and talk about why the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is sitting there, because there is a reason why he's there. Okay, I got to get out of here. Ran over my time again. I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.